Good morning. Good morning and welcome to our roundtable on standardization and quality assurance reimagined with a focus on the electrotechnical sector. To kick off the discussion itself, I'm going to hand over to Lungelo. Lungelo is the Chief Operating Officer at SABS. And Lungelo, what we want you to specifically do is introduce the topic itself and also just touch on the developments within the organization, as well as a view around this phrase, SABS Reimagined. Over to you, Lungelo.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks. You need to be excited just like me. Firstly, I would like to welcome everyone and thanks for making time to join us. We know that you are busy doing other activities in your businesses, but you've spared this moment so that you can have a conversation with SABS and everybody else that is involved. And thanks to the panelists who have also done the same to come and join us. I know that they always say that words of wisdom come with age, but I am convinced, Johan, that certainly if I look at everybody here is a mix, there will be those words of wisdom. Perhaps maybe everybody is asking themselves as to why are we here, or what brought us to be where we are today. In the past 2 years, we've been having a number of engagements with the clients individually throughout a number of sectors. But in those engagements, we realize that there are common themes that are coming through in terms of operational challenges that SABS or the clients themselves are experiencing when interacting with SABS. In certain cases, there were concerns that they were raising from a governance and leadership point of view. And we then thought that rather than going back to all these clients, it's going to take us another 2 years and will appear as if we are not committed. So let's have a sector-focused engagement so that then we can then unpack this. From a governance point of view, perhaps maybe I can start there. You will all know that SABS was placed under administration in 2018. And we went through a process to make sure that the administrators are developing what we had termed a turnaround strategy. That was then developed, and then it's the implementation part thereof now. But key to that was the matter relating to the board. I'm happy to say that the board for SABS was appointed and was on board effectively from the 1st of December 2022. So that is the first step in the right direction. However, as in any other organization, the appointment of the CEO is in the purview of the board. So the board has started that process to make sure that a permanent CEO has been appointed so that that CEO, together with the board and the leadership, can take the organization forward. I'm happy to say that I'm not from human capital, so don't send CVs to me, but I've seen that adverts are out. So I will encourage you that if you want to see the SABS of the future, you must apply. But don't send them to me. Send them to the right person there. Having said that, also from a leadership point of view, there are a number of appointments as part of the implementation of the structure. When we met in the past 2 years, there was a lot of acting. I must say that some of that has changed, but in certain instances, as the organization evolved, that has also changed. You will see that there is Katima Temba, who's the head for certification. And I know that most of you will want to have his name. So during the networking session, have his name because it talks to the mark and other issues that you might have. Then we also have Thabo Sipuru, who's the head of laboratories. Certainly those issues that talks to turnaround time in the laboratories, he's the gentleman to address those issues and work together with the industry. We've got Dinesh, who's the acting divisional head for customer partnering. That's the role that I used to fill in the past, but he's in that position. We are in the process to make sure that we close that part. And we also have Soli Peter Matlare, who's not here, attending another ISO committee meeting, who's the head of standards development. But certainly we can share these details. The list and not so important person, that's me, fulfilling the role that Dinesh has outlined. I don't usually like to talk about myself, so I'll skip that part. That's not important. So those are the leadership changes that have taken place. We are also in the process of finalizing the implementation of our structure. Currently, we are focusing now what we would call the bargaining unit. That's the area where the rubber hits the road. It's the test officers, and those also auditors. That process is also at an advanced stage. We want to make sure that at least in the next month or so, that process is completed. That will then bring us to a point where we can then say, from a structural changes point of view, we are at a level of where we have got everybody in a role, but perhaps then there are transitional plans where we need to then start introducing these people to the various stakeholders so that the issues, if you want to deal about customer-related issues, who do you talk to? If you want to deal about operational-related matters, who do you talk to? And that is going to create a lot of certainty in terms of who exactly do you engage with and what are the escalation mechanisms so that you can take us forward. Having said that, there will certainly be some gaps that will not be filled in the process, and as an organization, those are the ones that will attend towards the end, so that we make sure then that we embark on a recruitment process to do that. I must emphasize why we are then saying SABS reimagined. Whenever you engage with everybody, you hear the stories that SABS has actually deteriorated. The brand is still there, the brand is still valued, but it's a brand that is damaged. It's a brand that is going through challenges, and these challenges are at some point even making the clients ask themselves, what is the value that I still get from SABS? So we then thought that it's an opportunity to have an SABS reimagined. Reimagined is more futuristic, more aspirational. However, if we don't have aspirations and we are not clear on the vision that we want to achieve, we'll certainly not get to that point. We do understand that we are in a journey where we have to address a number of issues, both in the front end, in the back end, in terms of delivering the service to the clients, but we are aspirational that as a brand and as an institution, there's somewhere where we want to go. But as we do that, we don't want to do that in terms of us looking internally, in terms of what needs to be done, but we want it to be informed about what does the industry need so that we can have an institution that is fit for purpose, that can serve the industry, and not one that's going one direction and the industry is going to that direction. On that note, Dinesh, I want to then encourage all the participants that this is an open session. But I know that if you're looking on your left or on your right, you're bound to find that there is your competitor. Don't see them as competitors. See this as a conversation with SABS. And certainly, it's not an opportunity to share any trade secrets. Please don't get into that point. But let's have a constructive and robust engagement about the direction that SABS wants to achieve. So there are three things that we're asking. What is it that SABS is not doing right that's impacting your business? That's the first thing. The second one is that what are the things that at least we are doing right that we should be able to sustain so that we can go forward? Because it can't all be all doom and gloom. And lastly, we want you to take us through the journey that you are taking. What are some of the things at a high level that as we then develop these turnarounds, implement them, we need to take them into consideration? And then at an aggregate point of view, then we'll take it from there. Dinesh, I had said you must time me, I can talk the whole day. But thanks everyone, welcome on behalf of the entire SABS management. You are welcome. Our acting CEO is not in the session today, but he has given us his blessings to go ahead with the session, and the feedback will be given. The rest of the ESKOM members that are not here because whilst we are having this conversation, there's also business to run on the other side. So we've decided to split ourselves with the view that at an appropriate forum, we can then share the learnings from this and take it from there. Thanks everyone, and good luck. Thanks.
Thank you, Lungelo. Thank you for really setting the scene and really planting the seeds for the direction that this roundtable discussion will take. As we're moving ahead, SABS Reimagined is looking at what we commonly coin as a phrase, the one SABS approach. And what we want to try to do is find mechanisms to deal with you in industry from a one SABS perspective. So to set the scene and to kick off the discussion itself, I think it's only fitting that we start in the area of standards. We need a standard for things to really start to work. We need that baseline in place. And we really need to understand what is our standards division within SABS going to be doing, what are they looking at as part of the developments going forward. So maybe if you can, Mokomotsi, just share with us the developments on your end and also standards that are going to be launched in 2023. I think it's going to be interesting to understand what we can expect in the electrotechnical space. So with that said, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Dinesh, the project director. And thank you, the CEO, for affording us this opportunity. And also thank you, the larger industry members who have taken the time to come and join us in us, trying to deliver the work of standards, and particularly electrotechnical standards, in what we do. My talk really will be mostly on an overview, which actually sets the tone for the discussions that we'll have around standards. And at a later stage, I will take the calls, the questions, and so forth. So in that instance, I'm honored to be here today at the roundtable of standardization and quality assurance reimagined, where we gather to discuss the critical role of standards in shaping our technological landscape. Today, I would like to focus our attention on electrotechnical standards, particularly the department, and its profound impact on innovation, safety, and the integration of systems. So your electrotechnical standards stands as a beacon of progress in our ever-evolving world of technology. It is a specialized division dedicated to the creation and the maintenance of industry-specific standards. By collaboration with your experts, your stakeholders, and the working group experts, this department plays a pivotal role in driving the innovation and ensuring safety, fostering the integration of information and communication technology, systems and services. So by actively engaging with industry experts, this department identifies emerging technologies and addresses their standardization needs. It provides technical guidance and fosters compatibility, allowing for seamless integration and creating an environment conducive for innovation. Through this department's work, we have witnessed the development of remarkable standards for the technologies such as your renewable energy integration, your smart grids, and also your Internet of Things devices that have revolutionized the various sectors. Yet innovation must be accompanied by safety and compliance. And the Electrotechnical Standards Department recognizes this responsibility and ensures that the safety and the regulatory compliance remains at the forefront of technological advancement. So by establishing safety requirements, your performance criteria, and testing methodologies, this mitigates the risk, prevents accidents, and safeguards the well-being. And adherence to these standards not only ensures compliance with regulatory bodies, but also guarantees the customer safety. Moreover, the contribution to establishing these guidelines for product certification and conformity assessment reinforces the integration of the technological infrastructure. So none of this work can be accomplished in isolation. So the collaboration and engagement of stakeholders are a vital component of the electrotechnical standards development success. By actively involving industry stakeholders, manufacturers, regulators, and end users in the standards development process, We strive to ensure a collective effort in shaping effective and widely accepted standards. So the collaboration brings a diverse perspective and a shared expertise and an increased acceptance of adoptions of standards. Additionally, the department plays a significant role in fostering consensus building and harmonization amongst your different standards, organization and regulatory bodies. So by aligning the efforts and creating a unified standard, we streamline the process, enhance interoperability, and you reduce the redundancy in the industry. In recognition of the integrated nature of our system, the Electrotechnical Standards Department, it now incorporates your ICT, your systems and your services into its standardization effort. And this expansion acknowledges the interconnectedness of technologies and enables the development of harmonized interoperable systems by enhancing the opportunity presented by integrated system. The systems empowers innovation, ensures seamless interoperability, and sets the stage for a connected, efficient, and sustainable future. So with over 30 committees and working group of experts, the Electrotechnical Standards Development actively leads the charge in the standardization effort. It currently manages a program of work which comprises of over 200 projects, and it is its published publication has surpassed 1,400. The remarkable track record speaks the commitment to empowering innovation, safety, and the integration of technologies. So, in conclusion, the electrotechnical standards are an essential pillar in our rapidly evolving technological landscape. It drives innovation, ensures safety and compliance, and foster collaborations among stakeholders, and recognizes the importance of integrated systems. Its extensive committee infrastructure of over 80 committees and the multitude of projects it manages underscore its dedication to shaping our technological future. And thank you very much for your attention. And I think we'll take the questions later, but Dinesh will lead the charge in that area. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for that, Mokomotsi. I think it really, again, sets the scene for the discussion itself. Very key to all of this is the number of committees already active, the number of projects that you already have in space that talks to this particular sector and industry. And I'm sure most of you sitting in the room are probably even representatives of some of these committees. There's a lot of work our standards division does to try and encourage and get more participants, because a standard can only be written and coordinated by SABS. The input to the standards comes from the industry itself, and I think I'm talking to the converted as you sit here in the audience today. But you know, as we look at the direction SABS is taking, you've heard and you've had some input related to what we're doing in the electrotechnical space from a standards perspective. Our COO touched on the importance of Katima sitting in the room and certification, and most of you having a very strong interest in that particular area. So it's important that I then allow Katima to share, maybe as part of this discussion, the work that is taking place in that particular area within certification. What can the industry look forward to as developments and initiatives in this area? And so with that said, Katima, over to you.
Good morning, everyone present here and those online. I'm not sure why you choose me, but I think you go for the least resistant. That could be the reason. I realize I am not prepared like my colleague, so be that as it may, I'll try to do my best. I think Katima Temba is my name. I'm the head of the certification division. Having been with SABS now more than 2 decades, so time flies. So I think there are a number of issues that I'd really like to talk to this morning. It's hard issues, equally soft issues. And it's a combination of both. And I think as we converge today, we also need to confront the difficult issues, because by doing so, we'll be doing justice to this engagement. And the theme that I'll be advancing is on the aspects of SABS certification in advancing combined assurance. I think that's important. But also I need to speak the language that is equally relevant to the people in the room. Most of yourselves here, you exist because you want to remain profitable and competitive. That's the main reason you're in business. And what does the work we do and the service we render to yourselves bring that to your businesses? Some of the businesses you find yourselves, the margins are small. It's so competitive, it's not funny. And everybody else are looking for ways of cutting costs. And the quickest thing people will think of, I don't need a management system for my business, I don't need a product certification. But I want to encourage those who continue to have the SABS mark, and including to be certified by SABS, be it on ISO 9001, which is the service you continue to render. Environmental management, occupational health and safety, those are critical instruments that are important for any business sustainability and part of business continuity. We continue to render those services. But we're not naive to the challenges that this sector is facing in certain aspects. And I think, Chair, Program Director, without even stealing the thunder of my colleague sitting next to me from the NRCS, he'll be talking about other issues I don't know. But there are hard issues that industry is calling for, especially in this sector. I know that this egg has crumbled. We used to be one entity with the National Regulator for Compulsory Specification, but now we are sister entities. So we are joined on the hip on certain issues, and there's a need for that constant collaboration. And what industry is saying when we move around to say, but why are we subjected to so much duplication of effort? But industry is saying none of these entities is more important than the other. Both are critical. And these are hard issues, Program Director, I'm saying we need to reflect on. I'm aware that Henny is also on the call, and probably you'll be touching on these issues. But the issue, among other things, what some of you are saying to us, why do I continue to have an SABS mark? Which I must have it, and I know why I must have it, and I must equally be subjected to regulatory requirements, and there's nothing I can do about it because that's the law of the land. But we need a solution between the two. And somewhere there should be an intersection where there is a sweet spot for everyone. And those are the hard issues I'm bringing forward to say, as we collaborate, we have to reflect on these issues and try to find solutions. I spoke about difficulties of why businesses are struggling. And the cost of doing business is constantly going high. And how do we ease that cost of doing business? Because I think we charge for the services equally in terms of the law, fees will be due. And how do we then make sure that there is that middle ground? So I can report that those engagements continue to take place. The solution, it has not been reached yet, and I think these discussions are taking place at a senior level in both entities, including the Department of Trade of Industry and Competition, as an enabler and a mediator on these issues. So I thought maybe I'll break that ice. I know it will come at some point, among other things. But I think on the combined assurance perspective, I need to reinforce a few issues. So product certification remains very, very critical for this sector. And I think the power and the value of affixing an SABS mark on the product is beyond measure. This is known to many. Some of you have known this since elementary stage from school. And we see this value eroding over a period of time. And purely because of inferior goods that are flooded in our markets. Some even go beyond just flooding inferior goods, even affixing the mark illegally. These are the things we grapple with, we tend to come across from time to time when we do our work. And without constant collaboration and reaching out and working with yourselves, we will not win this battle alone as the Bureau of Standards. And as industry role players, you equally have your ears and eyes on the ground. The partnership needs to be stronger. We need to be closer to each other. As and when you see these products, there's nothing wrong to visit the SABS mark and check indeed your competitor. Does indeed they have this mark, and rightfully so. And you will come to raise the issue. I mean, element of confidentiality is what we do. We investigate the matter and we take the action because there needs to be value on the mark we're giving. So it's not only affixing that mark. So we need to look from a certification perspective. We're saying when we provide this combined assurance, you run production processes. There are issues of health and safety that needs to be observed by yourself. If we certify you for health and safety, including environmental management, plus product certification from a performance and safety perspective of the product, how do we then look at that as a basket of service offering to yourselves within reasonable costing that will be reasonable to yourselves? So a win-win situation. It does not make sense. You run production processes. Today, this auditor comes and look at compliance to a mark scheme. The following one comes on environmental management. The other day, another one on health and safety. Sometimes it's even different certification bodies, for that matter, at your premises. It does not end there. Part of our basket, government is driving other instruments to drive localization, which the work that we do touches on issues of local content verification. Some of you are procuring with the state, and you need this local content verification, which is a service we equally rendering. We make it available for some of you. And from a combined assurance perspective, how do we package these issues so that we minimize the costs of really doing the work we do, but at the same time minimizing a number of interaction and interruptions that is taking place at your facilities. But I think the value that also needs to be appreciated on this local content verification, our view of it, including the SABS mark, there is a big issue, I think most of you know about it, the aspects of mutual recognition. The issue of mutual recognition, I think it's a global phenomenon. And if the product is tested once and certified once, it's supposed to be accepted by all everywhere. This is the issue I think everybody's talking about. It can't be that you are certified and you have an SABS mark. We drive a Type 5 certification, but when you export your product out of the country, you are subjected to other TBT issues. That's why we're here. How do we assist yourselves to unlock some of these challenges with our counterparts, wherever you'll be doing business? So this is a type of value we also want to bring in this collaboration. And I think Program Director, lastly, talking to issues of mutual recognition. I mean, the elephant in the room, everybody's talking about issues around AFCFTA, Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, that we all know about. And central to it are the rules of origin. And these rules of origin will equally be supported by this local content verification, because at the continental level, there are many initiatives, such as Made in Africa, initiatives that are there. And if you say something is made in Africa, the rules of origin matter. And if you subscribe to local content verification, there are aspects of rules of origin that will really look at it to say, indeed, where does this product in question originate from? So there are a number of these developments that are taking place. So as much as we are based in the country, we continue to participate in many platforms. My colleague from Standards has spoken to those things. Locally in the country, in the region, SADC and the rest of the continent, different structures with our counterparts in the continent. And some of you export these products to these countries. When you experience these challenges in whatever form, reach out to us. Let's see how we can assist. But of importance, let's drive this combined assurance for ease of business. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Katima. I now understand why our COO at the outset put your name in the spotlight, because I can imagine everyone in the audience is waiting for 11 o'clock. When we have the session outside, everyone's waiting to speak to you. You've touched on some key points. I mean, combined assurance is just the way we need to start doing business as we go forward. And it impacts on so many other things. It's the cost of business. And this is where combined assurance can play that role. So I think Katima's come out very strongly. I'm certain he has some plans in place, and he'll be able to discuss those with you. The point around localization and local content verification, Katima has touched on it, but it's also something that's very close to my heart. I come from the textile industry, and most of you know what has happened to our industry, how it's become eroded over the years. And so local content verification can play a very strong role in re-establishing that area of textiles, clothing, but also localization can play a role in terms of making a difference in South Africa. So again, I think Katima's come out strongly. I think there's going to be some good conversations around that, and I'm certain there's good plans that he has in place. So whilst we are certainly talking about listening to you and your views, I think what's coming through so far is some of the views that SABS has started to craft as part of this reimagined approach that we are taking. Certification can't exist without the testing facilities and the testing requirements. So I think it's only fitting that I allow Thabo to come in and just give us an indication of what's happening in the testing space, investments, capitalization, plans going forward. And I think as an industry, we'll be interested to know what are the developments specifically in the electrotechnical space. So with that said, Thabo, over to yourself.
Thank you, Dinesh, and good morning, colleagues, including colleagues on the call. My name is Thabo Sipuru, the Divisional Head for Laboratory Services at the SABS. I think I would not necessarily talk about way too many things, and I'll leave the rest of the details to our networking session. But I think there are a few things that I wanted to, at least at this stage, re-establish as part of our SABS reimagined. The first being that we are operating in a space wherein there has been quite a few up-and-coming laboratories that are re-establishing their base and competing with the SABS. But the narrative that goes with a lot of these initiatives seeks to suggest that the SABS is out of business of testing. And so the first confirmation that I wanted to make here today is that SABS in the electrotech space, we continue and remain in business of testing. The extension of that very same conversation is for us to then say we have been engaging with our clients. Some of you have given us feedback, but key to the feedback we have received, the first is that we take long to respond to inquiries. And I think it's almost impossible for Dinesh to talk about himself and the critical role that he plays as head of customer partnering. And so this has been feedback we got, and when we came back into the organization, there's been a singular focus in resolving the problem of us taking forever to respond to inquiries. So there's a concerted effort to centralize our communication with clients internally, which is the area that Dinesh. So when I see Dinesh, I almost create different faces because I see clients each time I engage with him. So it's this area that is now or has now been established to focus on ensuring that all inquiries are received centrally and are responded to, so that we do not have this legacy of us continuing to take forever to respond to inquiries. The second pain point that we have received is that we take forever to test in our space. And so in our response to this big problem of testing, we have essentially implemented about 3 key initiatives. The one being that we needed to ensure that we increase our capacity by extending our working week. So we have in most areas implemented a model wherein we are operating not Monday to Friday but Monday to Sunday. So that's one. The second is that I spoke to the issue about the emergence of laboratories, and we decided not to look at those laboratories as competitors, but we then looked at them as partners. And through that initiative, we have then initiated a partnership model that allows for us to, in instances where we lack capacity, we are then able to outsource test work to those laboratories. Of course, issues of accreditation, the model they use and all of that, we do all of those confirmations before we subcontract test work to those labs. The third element is that we have also seen a growing base from within manufacturers, wherein you have also developed in-house testing capabilities. So we are continuing to have a conversation in that line to say where you have testing capabilities that we could then use to augment our testing capacity gaps, will be coming back to you. And of course, if and when you have testing capability that you allow us to make use of, there's a very good chance that we'll have a conversation that we do not only test your products using your infrastructure, but that we would also be, we can only do that if we will also be using the same for all other requests. So this is a partnership that we have then spoken to. Dinesh mentioned an issue around reinvesting in our operations. So we, over the years, I think most of you have been in our facilities and you have raised your own concerns about the state and the age of our infrastructure. And we have now gotten ourselves into a massive, we consider it massive even though it's not a lot of money, but it's a 3-year rolling recapitalization program that we are working on to try and recapitalize our testing infrastructure. We have already started with that initiative, and we should be able to see improvements. And this we are doing in ensuring that we do not just create testing capability and or capacity, but that we start looking at issues of automation in some of the areas. And then I think linked to the same concept of us recapitalizing our business, there are a few newer areas of focus which I think would come to the fore. The NRCS has recently published or gazetted VC 9091 on LED lamps. We have at least been ahead of the game in terms of our investment, in that we had already been preparing to ensure that we provide full testing capability in that space. We have now received a new integrating sphere that is going to enable us to run and test fully to the requirements of this new VC. We have received it. We are in the process of commissioning it. And I think it will be back online in the next 3 months or so. In the same space, we have a huge partnership with Sanedi, who have decided to co-invest in us building testing capability. So we are collectively procuring a goniometer that is going to enable us to perform full testing on street lights. And the last part that I thought I must just mention is that there's a new, and this is occasioned by the state we are in the electrotech space, wherein we are running short of power at almost all levels. But there's a bigger push for us to start using energy efficiently. And so on that program, we have also been slightly ahead of the game in preparing our, of course we have realized delays in ensuring that we bring on board our full testing capability to be able to perform energy efficiency on appliances. And we have more or less now, I can safely say we are 90% there in terms of being ready. And the 10% is just for us to do in-house work to ensure that we are fully equipped and we are starting to service the industry with energy efficiency solutions. So Program Director, let me stop here. As I said, the bulk of the conversation, I think I would reserve it for the negotiating session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Thabo. I think from that perspective, you've touched on a number of key points. But key to this is already listening to industry. The point you've already flagged, which is industry having their own laboratories, you as a SABS reaching out and realizing that SABS is not in this alone, and that together we can find solutions. Also recognizing that competitor labs don't have to be competitors, but can become partners. And I think these are key lessons that SABS has adopted and started to move forward on. But it's interesting the way you've pitched this, Thabo, because I think Katima started it, and I'm sure NRCS sandwiched in between Langa saying, gosh, I probably know I'm next, because Katima touched on it. I think all Thabo was doing was touching on key points around this integration points with NRCS. So Langa, really, I think in this conversation, I can't leave you out. You've got to come in straight away, but possibly if you can just keep the concepts of integration in mind. I made notes of two other things, consumer awareness drives, if you can possibly touch on that. Collaboration efforts, it just came out clearly from a certification side, from a laboratory side, and I'd really like you to maybe cover that as well. And then any other developments within NRCS. I think these platforms are just key because we need to start talking to industry with one voice and building that integration as we go forward. So I think with that said, over to yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Langa Jele, and I'm from the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. And my portfolio really is to develop the regulations in the electrotechnical sector, where we engage the industry before we do that, and we then implement those regulations through our electrotechnical enforcement division. I'm very glad that and honored to be invited into this platform. I think it is very important that we engage with the industry, and I like what I heard from Katima to say that we need to collaborate more in order to speak with one voice to the stakeholders, and to keep them up to date of what is needed and what is expected from them in terms of compliance. In terms of our mandate, as you know, that the NRCS main focus on the safety and health of the public. But with that, we also want to ensure fair trade in the market. So we need to treat everyone equally. We operate within the WTO TBT agreement, so we cannot be seen to choose between local and importers. But we are mindful that through various departments, and especially our principal department, which is the Department of Trade and Industry, one of their mandate is to make sure that we create more jobs in South Africa. Our minister, in his budget votes, he made a commitment that he will be there is a drive to create more than 100,000 jobs in South Africa in the near future, and 50% of that, I think, will be coming from the ITC funded projects. So as a regulator, we also need to take that into consideration to say that our VCs must be sound VCs, sound regulations that do not have a negative impact to the stakeholders, and that's the industry. And hence we have embarked on reviewing some of our processes to make sure that we are efficient and that we respond to the needs of the industry and the public at large. Because as the regulator, we need to balance the two. Our mandate is to ensure safety, but at the same time, we do not want to negatively impact the industry that we regulate, because we do not want a resistance in terms of compliance. We also see them as partners to make sure that we execute our mandate accordingly. There are a number of new developments that are happening within the NRCS and some of the regulations that we're working on. I've mentioned that our main mandate is safety and health of the public, but sometimes we also work with other departments and other entities. I think Mr. Sipuru mentioned the regulation we published on LED lamps, which was a collaboration between ourselves and SANEDI and also DMRE, which is the Department of Mineral Resource and Energy. And in that, we would like to contribute in reducing energy demand in the domestic sector and also in the industrial sectors. So there are a number of projects that we are working on to have an extensive contribution in that regard. And I think ESKOM, sitting on my left, will also be happy to hear that, because if we reduce the energy consumption from the demand side, then it also relieves pressure on the supply side. So we are also, as NRCS, trying to contribute towards that strategy to reduce the overall energy consumption. We, as I've said, we have introduced regulations that talks to efficiency in the lighting side. We are also working on a regulation to regulate the electric motor industry. And here we, working with DMRE, we've already conducted an impact assessment that has indicated that there will be massive savings in terms of that, because these are industrial motors that we are looking at, and the impact will be huge. And in our regulation, we've also put the SABS a standard, which currently is the SABS is running a certification scheme on. So we also need to leverage on the product certification processes, so that as a regulator, we can work together with the certification bodies, not only SABS, but other certification bodies that we can use, because as NRCS, we cannot be everywhere. We need to leverage in some of these activities that are done by other entities. And mainly our focus really now, we've changed our focus, since in the electrotechnical sector, most of the products are coming from abroad, and we have moved our inspections mainly to the ports of entries where these products are coming in. So we are stopping them and working with SARS, and wherever they detect electrotechnical appliances or products, they contact the NRCS, and we make use of the LOA so that they can access our market. So that has also then put a pressure on the NRCS, because we're getting a lot of applications in terms of the LOAs. And I know a lot of you are sitting here. I've just had a chat with some few stakeholders outside, complaining about our LOA process, that it takes time. But the NRCS is working hard to improve the system. We are embarking on our procurement processes, where we will be introducing an automated system where we are getting rid of the paperwork and trying to fast track the processing of these LOAs. And we are also working with the industry to try and educate them on what is required by the NRCS, because what we have found is that most of the time the industry itself do not understand our requirements. So it is very important that we give that information to the industry, so that when they apply for the LOAs, the process is seamless. And other projects that we are also embarking, we are embarking on projects that will talk to the renewable energy source. As you are aware that people are now moving away from the traditional electric supply, and they are using solar PV systems. And as NRCS, we are also embarking on looking at the safety of these products, because we get unscrupulous suppliers that are supplying the market with substandard products, and that pose a significant risk to the lives of our people. One of the products that we are currently working on is the inverters. We have already submitted the proposal to the minister to publish the regulations, to say we need to regulate the safety of inverters, because we have received some complaints and some reports that houses are burning because of these substandard products that are occupying our market. And we are also looking at the space of electric vehicle charging, because as you know that the electric vehicle market is also on the increase, and there are safety concerns in terms of these electrical charging stations that we also need to look at. DC appliances, due again to the move to the renewables, We also need to look at the safety of these DC appliances, DC cables, DC circuit breakers, to ensure that our consumers and the general public is safe. And I also just want to touch on the collaboration efforts that we are currently engaging with organizations such as BUSA and OUTA, to sort of discuss the challenges that the NRCS is facing and how we can improve our system. And these engagements are ongoing, and I will also appeal to the stakeholders in this platform to say, come engage us as NRCS. Our doors are open, and we know there are issues in terms of processing of the LOAs, but we are open for discussions. And the other thing that I wanted to sort of inform you about is in terms of the collaboration, we need your intelligence on the ground, because as I've said, that our inspectors cannot be everywhere. You know the market, you know the people who are not complying. And if we get that information through our concern process, we are able to make follow-ups and ensure that we eradicate this non-compliance. And as I've said, that we are embarking on several projects. We are currently reviewing our risk assessment methodology, where before we introduce a regulation, we need to conduct a risk assessment. This informs our regulations, because as a regulator, we don't want to unnecessarily regulate. I mean, we cannot regulate things that will not significantly pose risk to the consumers. That will be just impeding the business. So we need to be in the space of safety critical products, and we have appointed a service provider to assist us in benchmarking some of the risk methodology that are used in other regions and in other countries, so that we can improve our own systems. And we have also are now making use of service providers to conduct our impact assessment studies, because before a regulation goes to the minister must be satisfied that this regulation is not going to negatively impact the industry. And as I've said, that he has committed to create 100,000 jobs. And now if you bring a regulation that is going to impose more cost to the industry, then it wants it down well with him. So we need to have sound regulations that are informed. And this will also assist us to assess the cost and the benefit of the regulation, because a regulation must have a net benefit to the consumers and minimize the cost as much as possible to the industry. And we also need to assess testing capabilities in the country. I mean, Thabo has spoken to their efforts of setting up a lab to test to our new regulations that we have published. So it will become difficult for us to enforce our regulation if we do not have enough testing capacity in the country. And I think the other program director that you said I must touch on is the consumer awareness and the drives we are having. Currently, we are engaging with the communities at the rural areas. Our team is now currently at Mthatha as we speak, educating the consumers on our regulations and what to look for when they buy these products in their retailers, so that they can report back to the NRCS when they detect these non-compliance. Program director, I think I should pause now and allow other colleagues to have to engage with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Langa. I think you've met the mandate to the T. I can confirm there's some points you've raised around collaboration. You've mentioned it a few times around, and it's encouraging. I can also confirm that some of the work you've just mentioned that NRCS is doing currently in Amtata, it's not NRCS alone. It's going to these events as a group, and SABS is making sure that they are represented in these forums as well. So I think that collaboration, there's already evidence of it working. In terms of the overall education into the marketplace, I think these are key factors. Something you spoke about, and it cuts across the conversation that Katima had flagged quite strongly around, what do we do from a cost point of view? And I think you've highlighted the reviewing of the risk assessment methodology. I think it's absolutely key, because you don't want to find yourself over-regulating or regulating for the wrong reasons. And I think the approach is certainly encouraging. So there's a lot of activity that I've certainly picked up that you've shared in the NRCS space. Thank you for that. What I want to now do is we've got 3 more panelists. And what I would want to do is we've got 2 customers. So I'd like to take the 2 customers first. And then we'll ask Henny, who's connected in remotely, who represents associations, to come in at the end. So Paddy, if you are ready, Paddy will share with us and give some input from a customer perspective. Over to you, Paddy.
Thank you, Program Director. Dear colleagues, the DTIC leadership, SABS management, engineers, scientists, students, fellow entrepreneurs, and manufacturing industry leaders. My name is Paddy Pediachi. I, as an entrepreneur and manufacturer and businessman in the electrotechnical industry, I am going to address you in this morning with the theme that we in South Africa needs to pursue a goal of excellency in design, development, and manufacturing of locally manufactured products. The SABS, being a state-owned enterprise, is instrumental in providing the guidelines in line with international ISO standards and certifications for us as the industrialists to design, manufacture, certify products in South Africa. To this end, we need the SABS to provide the following vital services in our industry. Provide a professional certification body to qualify all manufactured products both in South Africa and for imported goods used in various sectors in South Africa. Ensure that products used in our country and consumers meet the SABS highest quality standards, safety and technical requirements. Provide SANS specifications which all stakeholders have input to ensure that products are designed for South African conditions and requirements. Provide testing laboratories which is as good as international certification bodies with state-of-the-art testing equipment. Provide our industry with type test facilities which is professional, efficient, and cost-effective. To assist local R&D initiatives, the SABS should endeavor to provide subsidized type test costs for products to be type tested and certified. Partial testing as well as retesting of new products should be done at reduced cost to assist the industry. If type testing costs are too expensive, then only the larger established companies will have an advantage and smaller SMMEs will not get an opportunity to compete in the industry. My focus for SABS, as Thabo mentioned, will be on NETFA's improvement for the service delivery in the electrotechnical industry. Upgrading NETFA's testing facilities, training of staff, especially the junior ones, to use the test equipment efficiently and with safety and efficiency, and give us a quick turnaround time on type test reports, which the industry needs urgently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paddy. I think that was absolutely to the point, and it's certainly areas that SABS will be looking at. I think the one point that Katima covered is, and which you've mentioned quite strongly, is the concept around, if you test and certify once, it should be recognized. And how do we drive this as we go forward? And this has to become a collective effort. And this is certainly work and areas of focus as we go forward. Paddy, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great. Quinnet, I'll allow you to come in. Just on Quinnet's side, there's just a couple of points that maybe, just possibly to guide some of the feedback. The one that we'll be interested in is some kind of strategy alignment from your end. What's happening and a comparison with world trends. And possibly what we want to try and see is what's the current view versus what's the future technologies that we can expect in this space. As you know, everybody, this is close to everyone. And, besides the representation of ESKOM as the organization, it's the direct impact as well. So I think if you could share this from this perspective, it will certainly help us in this discussion as we go forward. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Quineth Kumalo. I work for ESKOM. I'm a Chief Engineer in Distribution. I'm not the person responsible for load shedding. Please, colleagues, I'm just at the end of ESKOM. I'm in distribution. So as indicated, I will try to summarize what are our critical targets as ESKOM distribution. And I have to emphasize that I'm not representing the whole of distribution. There are a lot of chief engineers who are responsible for different streams within distribution, or rather within ESKOM. So I represent the cable systems environment, and I'm responsible for all cables from low voltage to EHV cables, and that is up to 765, but we haven't purchased 765 kV cables yet in ESKOM. The biggest we have installed is 400 kV. We've got about 3 sites where we've got those cables. In distribution, we're looking up to 132 kV cable systems. So if you look at the whole value chain of cable systems, it's the cable itself, the cable accessories for all the voltages, as I have mentioned, mini-subs, those are the equipments that we install in distribution environments, ring main units, and the indoor switchgear. So those are the equipments that I am directly responsible for in terms of standardization and specification, compilation of those technologies, and research of the technologies in that stream. So in as far as my work is concerned, what are our targets for this specific stream within ESKOM? We're looking at improving the performance of the plant. As we all know, we've got aged infrastructure, and that this actually affects the whole country at large, looking at different streams of technology. We've got aged infrastructure that needs to be refurbished, that needs to be replaced, and we are planning to optimize capital spend, compliance to legislation. Paddy has touched a little bit in as far as type testing is concerned. We have got standards that we are required to complying with in as far as the equipments that we are procuring to install in our plant. Those need to comply with their respective legislation. Safety of our people and the plant, continuous improvement, and obviously automation of our plant. We want to do what we call distribution automation. We need to ensure that our plant is remotely visible and remotely operable in as far as possible. Okay, and if we look at that, how do we ensure that this is achieved? What are our technology drives? What exactly are we planning to implement in as far as achieving these goals? We're planning to install IRTU fitted RMUs, which is a technology that we have recently introduced. We're planning to introduce the very same technology onto our mini-subs for the mini-sub manufacturers. And we have introduced energy storage systems, PEPES systems, which are currently being implemented and being constructed. internal arc classification switchgear that needs to be implemented or installed in our fleet. We need to install sensors, and we need to ensure that maintenance is done. What are our strategic areas? What exactly are we planning to achieve in as far as implementing these technologies that I have listed? We are planning, or we're hoping to achieve reliability and increase in capacity, customer centricity, cost efficiencies, funding and enablers, innovation transformation, and safety and security. So for us to be able to achieve all of this, I am responsible for a study committee that goes further in terms of filtering and researching the technologies that are available to ensure that all these are achieved. So currently, what we're planning to implement in as far as the medium voltage and low voltage space is concerned, we are struggling as a country. We are seeing a lot of, and I'll call them non-technical losses. That includes vandalism of infrastructure, that includes illegal connections. How are we planning to ensure that we get rid of those? So we're planning to introduce technologies that will assist us in combating theft and making it difficult for the people who are vandalizing our infrastructure, make it difficult for them to access our infrastructure. So how are we planning to do that? We're planning to introduce what we call low voltage copper-plated aluminum cables. So we're installing those. And the reason why we're installing those, it is metallurgically constructed in such a way that there are different metals that are bonded together, and it makes the scrap dealing of those cables worthless. So if we install those cables, the thieves are not going to steal those cables, because in terms of the market value, it is reduced. They'll have to ensure that they melt it, separate the different metals, and then sell it to the scrap dealers. That makes it very difficult for them to steal, because the scrap value then is close to nothing. And then we planning to introduce what we call bulk metering kiosks. So if you look at the, and I'll say large power users, currently we have got an installation where we would install a ring main unit, CTVT unit, and metering kiosk, separate equipments to ensure that the large power customer has his supply. But what we have introduced or designed is a smaller unit where we've got all of these different equipments packaged in one kiosk. So that is called bulk metering kiosk or bulk metering unit. There's a standard that we recently compiled, NRS 099, that the manufacturers are supposed to comply with. Then that speaks back to type testing. Then they need to be type tested in accordance with IEC 62271 Part 202 that they need to comply with. And if I talk to the team that is responsible for NETFA, there has been issues in as far as type test certificates is concerned, which I am hoping to have a discussion with the guys outside of the meeting to say what needs to be corrected, or rather what improvement that we would like to see in as far as type testing reports, the reporting is concerned, because we're seeing things that we're not happy with, and if we can improve from there. Then if we're looking at the metal enclosed switchgear space, if you look at the cable systems environment at large, most of our indoor switchgear, and that goes even beyond ESKOM into municipalities, we've got very aged infrastructure. Most of them, they are not internal arc classified, and the aim, or rather the plan, is to refurbish, install internal arc classified indoor switchgear. And that is going to take years, because then it speaks back to type testing. And in fact, in terms of local manufacturing, most of these units, we procure them overseas. And yes, we've got local companies that procure overseas, bring them locally, and then we install. And we'd love for the manufacturers to sort of improve in that space and have local manufactured indoor switchgear, if you get what I'm trying to say, Mr. Parayachi. And then if we look at, furthermore, I've already indicated in terms of IRTU fitted ring main units, what our plans are is to be able to remotely operate these units. We are able to remotely switch you guys in terms of load shedding. We are able to meet the time in terms of switching because some of our infrastructure is remotely operatable. But in as far as cable systems is concerned, we're sort of lagging behind. So we are introducing this to be able to do this in the cable systems environment. And if we implement this, it will result in being able to remotely operate small portions of the network. Now, if you look at load shedding as it is now, you'd find the whole suburb is being load shed. The reason why the whole suburb would be load shed is because the remote operability of the network is further upstream in as far as the network is concerned. So if we do that at ring main unit level, you will be able to sort of load shed a street. If I may sort of bring it close to home, load shed only a street and maybe the next street be load shed. Right now we are load shedding, say 20 kilometers of a radius and in that 2-hour space. So we're trying to reduce that. And then if you look at the high voltage space, high voltage cable system space, excuse me, colleagues, like I've indicated earlier, I'm from distribution environment, the division in ESKOM, which is predominantly responsible for collecting revenue. And we are struggling because of illegal connections. We are struggling because of vandalism. And with that, most of the technology space that we are looking into is to curb theft. And to be honest with you, colleagues, we are actually going 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards when it comes to theft and illegal connections. Because we install today and few days down the line it's being stolen. Now we have to replace. The money that should be used to continue improve, we are constantly repairing. So if you look at the high voltage space, we're looking at designing or rather replacing oil-filled cables which have aged. And we are looking at introducing aluminum bonding system for high voltage cable systems, and that is to curb theft. And the reason why we want to procure more of aluminum cable is because of the same statement that I've mentioned earlier, to say because of scrap value, aluminum is seen to be cheaper than copper. Therefore, the thieves are more leaning towards stealing copper. So we find ourselves having to replace copper cables with aluminum cables because of theft issues. So without wasting too much time, motorized racking, indoor switchgear, I've already indicated. Those who are aware of indoor switchgear, they explode a lot. And because of the aged infrastructure, we need to ensure safety of our operators, of our people. So how do we refurbish or rather retrofit the existing fleet without endangering our employees or our workers? We want to introduce what we call remote racking. So an operator should be able to rack in and out an indoor switchgear standing at 1 meter or 2 meters away from it without touching the switchgear itself. So those are the technological space that we would like to introduce into the business and in ensuring safety of our personnel and safety of the plant. But in my stream, the biggest issue at hand is theft. If you could come up with solutions that could assist us in curbing theft and vandalism of the existing infrastructure, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gwyneth. It's so sad when you listen to this that the focus has to be on illegal connections and vandalism. The entire effort sits literally in the wrong place, and it's extremely unfortunate. But thank you for that, and I think there's some key points that you flagged. which gives an indication of where the industry is going and what we can look forward to and what you can look forward to as businesses out there, getting a sight and view of what the future within this area of ESKOM holds. And for me, it's extremely exciting. It's telling us there's opportunity. How do we get into the value chain? And how do we position ourselves is going to be extremely key. We've reached almost the last panelist right now, and I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Henny, for accepting this invite. It's been difficult sitting, remotely and on his own. But if I could then hand over to Henny. Henny represents an association, and I'm hoping that he would provide us with context and background from an association perspective. So Henny, if you can hear us, over to you.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Program Director, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Cable Association of South Africa. Just to be clear, I'm not representing other industry associations. I don't have that mandate, but I am currently the technical subcommittee chair of the Association of Electrical Cable Manufacturers of South Africa, and I'm here in that capacity. I work for a cable manufacturer, and I know there are some cable manufacturers present on the call as well as in the audience. So I'd like to also just acknowledge them. Just to start off, we as the cable industry have been in a, let's say, marriage with the SABS for so many years, more than 70 years in some cases, with some of the initial permits that were obtained by members in the 1950s. So I think the approach that we've always taken has been that of cooperation and a softer approach to trying to overcome some of the issues and resolve some of the really sticky points in wanting to save the marriage, so to speak, and not to seek a divorce. So having said that, we as the industry association are in support of Type 5 schemes, and particularly also, of course, the SABS, of which most of our members have mark certificates and certifications for the quality systems associated with the marks. I think there's been many challenges over the last couple of years, and we should always remember that we as industry, the NRCS and the SABS have a common objective, and that is to maintain safety standards. And we as the industry are doing everything that we can to maintain those standards for the industry in which we operate in, because we know that if those standards are neglected or dropped, we have huge risks that will be seen by the public and anyone who is in contact with the electrical systems that are installed in proximity to many of our customers. So it's extremely important, and therefore the cooperation between the NRCS, SABS and the industry is absolutely critical. So I think when you look at the roles that we play, the three parties, that the NRCS is the one party in this relationship which holds the power by virtue of legislation. And if we as the industry can request that the NRCS assumes that role of taking the lead in reaching out, stretching out the hand to the other parties, and to try and make this relationship work as best that we all can. We will play the supporting role, of course, in whichever way we can, but we recognize also that the industry must be compliant. There are very few, if any, of the members of the Cable Association at this point that do have valid LOAs, and there are many reasons for that, or not that many perhaps, but there are good reasons for that. And one of them is not that we are not prepared to pay levies. The issues that we faced up to now has been around the process of obtaining LOAs that cover the range for which the mark holders are accredited for, and personally I believe that those issues are easily surmountable. I don't think it's a major problem, but it deals with the issue of the interpretation of standards, of range coverage, and how the various parties see this issue. So we plead with particularly the NRCS to come together with us as industry and with SABS to try and resolve this matter as soon as possible. We've had many engagements with the DTIC leading the conversation, and of course directly with the SABS and with the NRCS. But although some progress is reported in terms of discussions taking place on addressing this matter, we are not at the point where we can obtain LOAs for the ranges that are covered in our permits. All right, I think having said that, I can just reflect on what some of the speakers have so eloquently put forward. Katima had said that product certification remains really important, and we absolutely agree with that. We've seen other players entering the market, and of course they are playing the roles, but we as association have always taken the stance to support the SABS, and we would like to continue doing so for the foreseeable future. And we'd like to reach out to assist wherever we can. We have done so in the past, and we will assist and continue to assist, whether it be with respect to training or information sharing, on collaborating in whatever way to make this relationship work for the industry. We're very excited to hear from Thabo that manufacturers' test facilities could be utilized in future. We've of course seen that in the past with, let's say, for instance, fire tests and so on. So we welcome that potential opportunity to provide a service and to be of service to the industry. Langa had mentioned that there is a need to collaborate more with the SABS. From an NRCS point of view, that was his first point that I'd made note of here, and I couldn't agree more, and that speaks to what I've also alluded to earlier in my talk here. He had also said that the industry itself do not necessarily understand the NRCS requirements, and I think definitely that has been a point of let's say friction, and I think that needs to be addressed. I think the understanding of what test laboratories can do in terms of specifying let's say range coverage and so on, that in particular needs to be discussed. And I think also the industry advisory forums that is envisaged by the NRCS Act is important, that we try and get that off the ground so industry can on an ongoing basis share thoughts and offer assistance, and for the NRCS to give feedback and let's say to smooth the process and make sure that the industry remains compliant. We also welcome the outstretched arm from the NRCS to say that the industry should collaborate, and that the intelligence on non-compliant products is needed. We have done that either directly through manufacturers or through the Cable Association or via bodies like the Safe House entity. So we'll really continue doing that, and if there's a way in which we can, let's say, step that up, we open to hearing those suggestions. Then there was also the need pointed out for sufficient testing capability from Langa. We totally agree with that as well. I think we've seen some really long delays in having test reports available, and also our permits coming to their end without actually having the necessary test documentation or certificates available to renew these permits. So that has been quite a bugbear for most of the members of the association. So I think in closing off, Queeneth mentioned the issues of theft. The Cable Association and its members are, let's say, continuously looking at ways in which we can combat theft through the products that we offer to the market. And we hear the message loud and clear. So we will certainly continue encouraging our members to develop and do the R&D in this field and put new products on the table. So with that said, thank you very much for listening and for the opportunity.
Henny, thank you very much for that, and thanks for clarifying the representation. It's the Association of Electrical Cable Manufacturers, and I think that point came up very, very clearly, so noted. Thank you as well for, I think you took the lead in summarizing some of the points from the general discussion, and that is really appreciated. With that said, I think I'll take the lead from what you just started and maybe allow a few minutes for those that are available in the room to maybe be able to comment, raise a point or a question around the discussion itself. So I think I'm happy to open the floor for the next 10 or 15 minutes. There will be roving mics going around. And if you can just raise your hand and indicate if you have a comment, question, very similar to what Henny has just done. I think he's already started that approach, and I thought it would be important that we maybe give you guys the opportunity as well. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director. Just on the issue of certification, I would like to find out if there is any initiative at this stage to get some accreditation for our laboratories, that there are recognition agreements, as has been the case in the past with, let's say, LOVAC and so on, or amongst testing laboratories working together. For example, that chemo will accept, certification that is issued by the South African Bureau of Standards. I think industry through the associations would greatly benefit from understanding exactly, or getting an awareness of the full suite of testing capabilities that exist within the SABS platform. And then I think Paddy raised the issue earlier on. If one goes, because there was a perception that a few years ago the SABS was not able to furnish the full set of testing capabilities that the market was looking for, I think they've gone a long way towards turning that situation around. But I think pitching the type test costs competitively, I think, is very important for local industry, especially if you look at the fact that we have to, if we go overseas for type testing, you're looking at rate of exchange, and then the costs become prohibitively expensive. And we would like for SABS to actually look at doing that. And lastly, just on the issue of certification and type testing, the turnaround time is a bugbear, and if that can be addressed, that'll be a great help. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I think there's 4 parts to the question, and I'd propose that we maybe provide a response to that before taking the next question. If I can separate that in some way, Katima, just on the certification initiatives relating to recognition agreements, if you can talk to that. The full suite of testing capabilities, Thabo, if you can cover that. And then maybe together, just the issue around turnaround times. It's both in the testing and certification space. And maybe just give an overview of the direction we're taking and the approach. So Katima, let's start with yourself first. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I hope there's no tea for your hand after these questions. But these are good questions. Basically, from a certification perspective, even though majority of these questions are leaning on the testing side, I think my colleague will unpack further. But I just want to emphasize that I think the way the system works, we are part of the global system as it's known. So the work we do, we are accredited in this context by SANAS as an accreditation body, South African National Accreditation System. By virtue of them being the accreditation body in the country, they are also signatories to international bodies, in this case, IAF, International Accreditation Forum. And all what I'm saying is public information, even if you get onto the IAF website. So SANAS will be a signatory to the mutual recognition arrangement that is developed globally. It's a global system. And that is intended at enabling this point you are raising, to say if a product in question is certified by a member who is a signatory to this MLA or MRA, therefore that certification is supposed to be accepted elsewhere. So it's that principle of testing once, certifying it once, and accepted by all. So not everybody is a signatory, but I'm aware we are as a country through SANAS. So it's expected that where that is required, it should be acceptable. But these things, they continue to be TBTs, technical barriers to trade, for different reasons. Sovereignty of countries, protection of economies, etc., etc. So as in circumstances where yourself, anyone encounter these challenges, let's have these engagements. We reach out to our colleagues wherever your product has been questioned or detained or stopped. How do we unlock that using these platforms? And I think Thabo, without stealing his thunder, you will also talk to the same principle at an ILEC level. But maybe let me not steal his thunder and allow him to talk to those issues. But the issue of turnaround times, I think it cuts both sides. We are equally joined on the hip on the work we do to issue a permit for a product. There are high dependencies internally, be it from a testing perspective. So it's not only because delays are from a testing perspective. Equally from management of certification activities on its own, which is by nature an administrative process. So sometimes I will acknowledge sometimes we are lagging And there is need for us to improve and be efficient in that regard, such as making sure that samples are drawn timeously. We are aware some of the products are engineered products, and at times during the time of the audit, probably manufacturing is not taking place. That has an implication to the audit process, and sometimes it has a ripple effect and affects the entire system and how we manage some of these activities timeously. So the seasonality where it exists, we try and retrofit and see how we accommodate each other. But administratively, issuance of audit reports when audits have taken place, it's something that we have to do timeously, including issuance of permits, because in the end, you thrive on those permits. And most of the colleagues here use these permits, be it for tender purposes, for whatever the case may be. And these have become very, very critical and important in recent times. It's not a new thing. Other underwriters are calling for these certificates, and which reduces premiums, etc., etc. So it's something that we do realize that we equally need to step up our game. And there is an internal reflection on this issue. I don't want to use these terms that are used loosely, but we need to optimize our processes, digitalize them, and really provide our customers in this context real-time access on various platforms to be able to access information. All of us sitting in this room, we're sitting with smartphones, and this is what we are planning, and we're working on those things internally. Without calling me or sending me an email, through your app, you should be able to access your information, be it your permit, your certificate, things like that. So these are the things in the background we are advancing to really try to up our game. I hope that Thabo can assist me in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Program Director, and thanks, John, for the questions. I think by and large, in terms of the mutual recognition agreements that are there, Katima has covered it. The same applies to laboratories. What then becomes an issue, I think, it's the internal systems that we are following. So, for an example, we cannot and would not be able to take responsibility for the outcome of a test that we did not sanction. So I spoke about earlier about the partnerships that we are engaging and we are having with most of the labs that have got testing capability that we may not have, or in some instances they have additional capacity. We can always make use of those. But the question around type testing, I think I take it as feedback. Queeneth raised the same issue. I think give us an opportunity to reflect, because it's clearly an issue that we need to work around. And I also understand that those tests, if we do not develop capability locally, in fact, it's almost in all areas that it becomes almost exceedingly expensive to test. In some other markets, the logistics of transportations of some of the samples becomes a nightmare. And I've also noted, I think, the improvements we need to talk to around our test reports, especially the type test reports that we are issuing. So if you allow, I think it's a conversation that will most definitely come back to you once we have aligned mainly with ESKOM as the main user of those test reports. And we can always agree on what then becomes the improvements that we'll be able to share. The turnaround time issue, as earlier stated, the only mechanism we have is to either recapitalize our business to increase capacity. Alternatively, what we have currently in place is making use of additional capacity that other labs have that we may not have. And lastly, I think it's just the model that we have implemented of extending a working week from 5 days to 7 days. So that's more or less where we are. Thanks, Chair. That's briefly my response.
Thanks, Thabo. And I think Johan is covered, with those responses. I just want to check if there are any other questions. Not necessarily questions. If there isn't, if there's any input or just a comment, please, you can feel free to raise it. There's an opportunity. If not, then I'll hand over to Lungelo to maybe give the closing remarks. So let's give it a moment. Any further? Yes.
So you'd get to a point where we get audited and we don't have results of the samples that we sent to you guys. And we would run around calling and trying to find out where is our test from your department, and we struggle to get information. So you talking about the app, it's thumbs up for that one. Please make it as in yesterday to be efficient. Thank you.
Lungelo, over to yourself for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Perhaps maybe before I close, there are just maybe 4 things that I want to touch on. It is clear that there are a number of issues in terms of how competitive we are from a pricing point of view. One of the things that we have actually kicked off a project from next week is the pricing review for the entire certification business, for all the sectors. We've got ambitions to have that process completed by the end of this financial year. I don't want to preempt the outcome, but it's going to tell us stories. And as a result, the outcome of that process will then inform as to how we move forward. There will be instances where there are under recoveries. There will be instances where there are over recoveries. There will be instances where we're on par. But we want to get to a point to then say, how competitive are our services to the rest of the market? And that value must then come to you as a client so that you can realize it. The second one is that there are a number of inefficiencies that within the institution we have identified. And some of them talks to 3 areas. The first one talks to the processes I think Katima has touched on. We have a number of processes that are manual. Some of them are not talking to each other. Some of them are not enabling the collaboration part. So we are embarking on a process now. Katima said he's not going to use the big words, where we do a business process review for the entire organization. Both from vertically, in terms of the whole areas in the business, if it's testing end to end, so that we can see the visibility of that, but also horizontally. How do we then make sure that we can see the entire SABS value chain? It's going to enable us 2 things. One, we can then start talking about the automation and the apps that we're talking about, the solutions. But equally importantly, there is certain data or data, depending which school you went to, there is certain data that we are not picking up. And the performance of these processes, if we are not seeing it up, we'll only rely on clients complaining that the certification process takes forever. But do we have capabilities internally to see that that process, it is indeed taking forever, and where exactly in the process? So the process mapping is going to enable us to do that, and then we can be able to get to those points. That process is going underway. It's just waiting now the final board approval at the end of this month from a funding point of view, and then we're going to roll it, and we're going to start with operations. The outcome of that also going to talk to the technology part, where we do automations. A lot of areas within the space are using manual processes. There are spreadsheets, there's these SharePoints, there's that and that and that. And we want to then say, from an operations technology point of view, can we have the lab information management system in place, the certification management system in place, but they must also talk to each other. The standards system, the local content, and then all of these can then be able to ensure that people focus on doing the testing, the auditing, and not spending too much time on non-value adding activities. And then that results going to on the efficiencies there. But it's going to follow the business process part so that we can get to that part. We are selling knowledge, and that knowledge relies on the people that are working on this. A number of you in the industry is complaining about we change auditors, we change test officers. Sometimes there is no transfer. If OMCOS came in to do the audit and Lungelo come in, there is no transfer in terms of what was picked by Lungelo and what is picked by OMCOS, so that there is continuity in the value that you get. You seem to be scratching all over the show. Sometimes we're even confused in terms of what needs to be done. So the aim is that as we then embark on a multi-skilling approach, firstly to establish that these are the competencies that we need to have. And what is it that we have in place? What is it that we don't have? Where are the gaps? Clients only realize value where the depth of our auditors, the test officers, and the standard writers is at the right level. And then we're going to then embark on a process to then say, how do we then close those gaps so that we then move from that point. We do acknowledge that you can come out from university, but the depth is by doing. If you don't learn and have the skin in the game, if I can use that term loosely, that technical depth is not going to get, and exposure is critical. So that's one of the areas that we're going to be looking at to close those gaps. I thought let me touch on these so that we can be able to then say, yes, there is a process that we're taking, there is a process that is taking us forward so that we can get to this part. I think the last one that I want to also make a plea is that what I've seen to be a trend is that we have audits that are planned and audits are rescheduled. And at times, these audits are rescheduled because of our own doing. We're scoring our own goals. But sometimes they are rescheduled because the clients are not happy and are not ready and all those kind of things. I think it's a process that we need to manage very carefully because there are risks to your business and the risk to the mark scheme as a program if these things are not managed collectively. But I think we must also hold each other equally accountable. Where SABS has not done what they're supposed to do from an audit preparation, the planning part and all those kind of things, how do we then make sure that we hold each other accountable? But with the focus to then say, what is the business risk if these audits are not done on time, jointly, and then we can do those things. So the aim then is to then say, we take the feedback, we acknowledge that there's a lot of work that we still need to do, there's a lot of reflection that we need to do internally, but there are strides that already we are making so that we can take the organization forward. We are not going to achieve all of this in the next 6 months or so, but I think what's important to you as an industry is for us as SABS to demonstrate that we are listening to you, we're listening to these issues, but more importantly, we're making these things happen so that we can then do them in a sequence approach. I want to thank everybody that has participated online and the ones that are in the room, but also the panelists for coming and making sure that you come and share these with the colleagues. I do know that PD, there are other, and Henny, there are other associations who are going to be jealous now. I'm not going to mention any names. But as we go through the next programs, we want to extend this to all the other associations and all other clients so that we don't have a voice from one side, but a voice from the broader industry that SABS represent. Moving forward, where we always fail is we have these conversations, there are things that are agreed on, but we don't close them. There is no feedback. So we'll reflect as a team and find the best way in which we can address some of the actions, but more importantly, feed that feedback to at least the participants that are in the room and then to the broader industry so that you can see these strides and that particular progress. Thanks everyone, and thanks to the organizers. I must emphasize, colleagues, that as you see this beautiful thing that was put together, there are graduates behind this. Some of them are participating in the meeting, so there are graduates behind this. So as much as they are being led by the various colleagues, we must also give credit where it's due that there are graduates that are behind making this event a success. And thanks to them, thanks to the organizers, thanks to the entire SABS team, and more importantly, thanks to you from the feedback that you've provided us. We're certainly going to make it work. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you once again for participating. We really appreciate this. To the panelists as well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules and for making this first roundtable for 2023 really, from my perspective, a huge success. So thank you very much. Thanks, guys.